Good morning, this is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Tom McKenzie in London. Happy Wednesday. These are the stories that set your agenda. And then there was one. President Trump says he will name the new Fed chair early next year, hinting that Kevin Hassett is his possible choice. This as Bitcoin rebounds after a bruising sell-off. Stalemate in Moscow. Talks between Russia's Vladimir Putin and US envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner end without a breakthrough, leaving efforts to halt the fighting in Ukraine stalled. And the EU reaches a deal to phase out Russian gas imports faster than originally planned in an effort to finally sever the bloc's remaining energy dependence on Moscow. So European stocks eked out very modest gains of 0.1% by the close yesterday. It was a positive day for the US, not gangbusters, but you've had 6 straight days or 6 days of gains out of 7 in terms of trading days for the S&P 500, and that continued yesterday. The futures picture looks to build on that today, with S&P evenly pointing higher by 0.2%. European stocks also futures pointing to gains of 0.3%. We have a lot of data out of the US, of course, and then the decisions of the BOJ and the Fed later this month. We have ADP later today, and then of course, the PCE, that preferred inflation gauge for the Fed, on Friday. So some of that is leading to a bit of caution in these markets. Here in the UK, FTSE 100 futures pointing up just 2 points. NASDAQ 100 futures stateside after some news, quite a lot of news flow on the tech front coming up, pointing gains of 0.2%. A red alert warning from Sam Altman over at OpenAI. Let's flip the board and have a look. Cross asset then. Treasuries, a little bit of a bid across the curve today. 407 right now on the benchmark US 10-year, largely unchanged on the 10-year. But you have seen a little bit of money moving into US Treasuries in the session. We'll see how that adjusts. Essentially, stability across Treasuries today. Euro dollar at 116, up 0.1%. The Bloomberg dollar index is down about 0.1. So a little bit of a softer dollar giving a lift to the euro. Bitcoin, look at that. The gain coming through above 93,000 now, so quite the pop given the pressure that we've seen on the broader crypto space. There's some fragility there, but we've also heard from the SEC chair and also from Vanguard in terms of including ETFs and mutual funds linked to crypto that is giving something of a lift to the crypto space today, up 2.3% in the session, back above 93,000. And Brent at $62 a barrel, largely unchanged on oil. We know traders, of course, continue to monitor the talks when it comes to negotiations between Ukraine, Russia and the US. Let's cross over to Asia right now. Winnie Su standing by for a check on the markets in that region, joining us out of Hong Kong. Winnie.
Morning, Tom. So we're really not seeing much going on in overall Asia market today. However, the key highlight here is the technology sector. As you can see here, the tech-heavy Kospi and also the Nikkei 225 both up 8%. And that's being really driven by not just the overnight gains from the U.S. peers, but also how Marvell Technology came up with quite upbeat comments on how they're expecting the data center revenue to grow by more than 25% next year. So that's driving overall sentiment around the AI optimism. And here you see that SoftBank is up some 7% on that optimism, but also how Citi has upgraded the stock to a buy and citing that how concerns around the OpenAI investment is overdone. Now, CrossAt says something interesting today. Here is the India rupee. As we flip the board and see how the India rupee has actually weakened past the 90 per dollar key psychological level. And yes, it has been in a free fall in the past few sessions. There are a lot of concerns. It is that the fact how it has not signed a trade deal with the U.S. and that 50% tariffs from the U.S. and also the widening trade deficit, as well as how foreign investors are selling stocks. So overall, that has been really weighing on the currency and making it more difficult for the RBI, which is expected to kick off its 3-day policy meeting from today. And for now, we are expecting a cut, but definitely a bit more uncertainty with the weak currency. Now, flip the board and we take a look at what's going on with the Chinese market, because actually we are seeing things really under pressure. And the Hong Kong shares are losing a bit more than the onshore stocks, but both gauges are extending its losses in the afternoon. And in the morning, we did get that private PMI service numbers showing still a bit of a slowdown. And that really shows how the economic recovery really still remains a patchy trend. And that is really still weighing on the overall stock market as investors want to see more signs for the policy follow through. Back to you, Tom.
Winnie Su in Hong Kong, thank you very much indeed with an update on the Asian markets with pressure, yes, on mainland and Hong Kong stocks this morning. Now, President Trump says he plans to announce his selection to lead the Federal Reserve in early 2026. Trump made the comments during a cabinet meeting and later teased National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett as his possible choice.
I want to thank you all for being here. It's a great group. And I guess a potential Fed chair is here, too. I don't know. Are we allowed to say that? Potential. He's a respected person, that I can tell you.
OK, let's bring in Bloomberg's Valley Taitel. Val, he's just toying with us at this point. So Kevin Hassett was in the room. Everyone turned to look at him. Look, this has not been confirmed. But, of course, Bloomberg reporting about a week ago suggested that Kevin Hassett was the front runner in this race. But now the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, had said we would know by the end of this year. Yeah. Now the president's saying early next year.
Yeah, so maybe that was the one curveball yesterday. Again, he was teasing Hassett, as Bloomberg reported last week, but then said that maybe it's not going to come before Christmas. We have to wait till early next year. So the markets have to hang on for a few weeks more. But it was the clearest signal yet from Trump that Hassett is the front runner, matching what Bloomberg did report last week. That really pairs with what the betting markets have seen as well. If we look at Kalshi, it's pricing in around an 80% chance that Hassett is to replace Jerome Powell as Fed chair come May next year. The big question, though, for markets is Hassett the guy who is going to bring this fractured Fed together? Is he the guy with the type of background, the type of credentials that is able to use these powers of persuasion to heal a fractured Fed? Now, on one hand, he does have quite an economic pedigree. He's known very respectedly as a conservative economist. He also served as National Economic Council chair under Trump's first term, which is chimes with four other Fed chairs, actually. Alan Greenspan, Arthur Burns, Janet Yellen, and Ben Bernanke all held that position in the White House before becoming the Fed chair. But he does have some pretty bold calls when it comes to his economic policy. He, long-term this year, has always held the stance that Trump's policies net are disinflationary and they're good for growth. That does stand out, at least when it comes to the other FOMC members who are maybe a bit more cautious on claiming a victory over inflation ahead of Trump's tariffs still making their way through their economy. The other point just to make out is, anyone taking over this Fed chair seat is going to have an issue getting the consensus together with the Fed. This is a very divisive Fed. We have to go all the way back to 1995, around 30 years to find a Fed as fractured as this one. When it comes to the December decision, we've had about half the members voice opinions for holding rates, while some other members do want to cut. The market is pricing in that we are going to cut after hearing from Fed Fed Governor Williams a few weeks ago. But net, the market did take this a signal from Trump as positive. We did see a small rally in the front end, but those 2-year yields are really hanging around the 350 level where they've been for the last 2 weeks. OK,
so that Fed decision a little bit further out, later this month, of course. Before that, we get data today and then, of course, inflation print on Friday. How are the markets thinking about the data? How sensitive are they to the drops today?
Well, the equity market has been pretty range-bound this week. We're still struggling for momentum, at least in the broader U.S. equity market this week. We do have some data this week to at least hang our hat on for the month of November. ADP is out today. That's the private payrolls survey metric for the month. We also have ISM services for the month of November ahead of this PCE data on Friday, which is the delayed release of PCE from September. So it is going to be a busy December for markets. Next week, we have the Fed decision. As I mentioned, it's still quite contentious. And then the week after, we get the November CPI and labor market data. So a busy December still on the cards. We're going to have a heavy week when it comes to that third week in December, which is normally quite a low volume week, could be instrumental for Fed policy moving forward. The other thing for markets to keep their eye on is this continued rally in Bitcoin. It was up some 6% yesterday, continuing a strong rally this morning, up around another 2.5%, trading just shy of 94,000. So we have to weigh, I guess, at least the equity market struggling for direction. At least Bitcoin is rebounding after quite a brutal Monday session.
OK, Valerie Taitel, thank you very much indeed. Let's get to geopolitics now, because the Kremlin says talks between Vladimir Putin and US envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were very useful, despite both sides failing to reach an agreement on a plan to end Russia's war in Ukraine. Let's bring in Bloomberg's Russia economy and government editor Greg Sullivan. Greg, what more do we know about the talks and whether or not there was any material progress?
That's right. The Kremlin did cast these nearly 5 hours worth of negotiations as largely constructive, though they were clear that no final agreement had been reached, especially on the issue of territorial concessions. Now, that's hardly surprising because throughout the negotiating process, the Kremlin has stuck to maximalist demands that Ukraine is not willing to accept. Among those, obviously, is the issue of territory. Moscow has been demanding that they get part of Ukraine's east that they have not been able to take militarily and that Kyiv still controls. Ukraine has ruled this out, and that remains a large sticking point, and clearly that came up in the negotiations and remains a sticking point. From the Ukrainian side, of course, security guarantees are likely to be a sticking point as well. It's hard to see what would satisfy Ukraine that wouldn't be a deal breaker with Russia. So again, hardly surprising that they're saying no final breakthrough was reached, though both sides did say that they were willing to continue working.
And meanwhile, Greg, this is the time when Vladimir Putin is ratcheting up his threats to ships, to navies, to those who he says are supporting Ukraine. What does he be saying in this respect?
Well, that's right. There has been an uptick in targeted attacks on freighters and tankers in the past week. This comes amid a broader push by both sides to target energy infrastructure. Clearly, this has touched a nerve because President Putin said that the Kremlin wouldn't necessarily do, but would consider targeting ships of countries that support Ukraine. Now, both sides are trying to gain an advantage in these negotiations, and they see energy as a key way to do that. For Ukraine, hitting refineries, pipelines, that stops the flow of revenue to the Kremlin's coffers to fight the war, as well as fuel to the battlefield. For Russia, they're hoping that targeting energy infrastructure such as heating and power ahead of the winter warming season will decrease morale and incentivize Ukraine to make more concessions in the negotiations.
And Greg, talking of energy, the EU has reached a deal to phase out Russian gas imports by 2027. Many people would say, finally, and it's maybe coming a little bit too late, but they have had that deal. What are the wider implications of that agreement?
That's right. So Europe did actually have the amount of gas that they imported in the wake of the 2022 invasion. However, they still import about a fifth of their gas supplies from Russia. Now, they've sought to try to get to an agreement where they can phase that out completely, partially so that they're not funding the Kremlin's coffers as well, and partially so they can increase the pressure. There's also been U.S. pressure on Europe to sever energy ties with Russia and buy more American LNG. It appears that they've finally reached an agreement to do that. This will be in line with other agreements such as bans on seaborne crude imports. So this is all part of the Europe trying to both structure their own energy security and also increase the pressure on Moscow. And again, finally reaching an agreement to sever those energy ties.
Bloomberg's Russia government editor Greg Sullivan with a comprehensive update in terms of what to think about when it comes to Russia, Ukraine and Europe's gas demands. Greg, thank you. Here's what else to think about today. We're going to switch focus at 6:30 a.m. We're going to break Inditex earnings, the parent company of Zara, of course. We'll see how pricing and demand is coming through for that company. The stock is up just about 2% year to date. 7:30 a.m. Meanwhile, a UK time, we're going to get inflation data out of Switzerland. Swiss CPI data drops at that time. And at 1:15 p.m. UK time, as, of course, we were hearing from Valerie Teitel, US ADP payroll, so a gauge of private hiring in the US as we lead up, of course, to next week's Fed decision. Coming up, French President Macron visiting China today. We're going to break down what to expect from that trip and what Beijing is seeking to achieve. That is next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Now, French President Emmanuel Macron begins a 3-day visit to China today, with the Taiwan issue expected to take centre stage. For more, let's bring in Bloomberg News editor Balazs Pence. Balazs, what will be the other main points of discussion then between Macron and Xi Jinping during the 3-day visit?
Well, from the French side, certainly, Tom, Ukraine and trade are the two main issues. So when it comes to the issue of Ukraine, Emmanuel Macron has been one of the most vocal supporters of Ukraine, even when we talk about the kind of broader European context. And Macron has been very vocal that he sees China as one of the key sources of leverage on Russia, on Putin, and he thinks that some pressure from Beijing can force Russia to sort of come off some of their demands when it comes to the Ukraine negotiations. When it comes to trade, France has been pursuing its own trade policy, of course, when it comes to China. So Macron has been pretty critical of some Chinese trade practices. He's been one of the advocates of this European tariffs that were put on Chinese electric vehicles. And in turn, French producers, especially when it comes to some spirits and pork producers, have been very worried about potential retaliation. So that's something he will want to smooth over. There's obviously also Chinese investment that France has been seeking. Airbus has been trying to sell some planes to Chinese airlines. So there's a lot when it comes to the economic relationship that they will also have to discuss.
OK, Bloomberg News editor Balázs Pence with an important update in terms of what to think about as President Macron lands in China for that 3-day visit, expected, of course, to start in the next couple of hours. We had some breaking news right now on Airbus. We've seen all the challenges, of course, that this company's faced in terms of software updates and, of course, defective panels in recent days. And now this is the update then from Airbus, the European aircraft maker, of course, lowering its 2025 commercial aircraft delivery target to 790. So it has lowered its 2025 commercial aircraft delivery target to 790. The understanding is that the previous target was 820. That is my understanding. 820 was the previous target. What we now know, though, and this is confirmed, is that Airbus will lower that 2025 commercial aircraft delivery target to 790. The financial guidance for the company 2025 remains unchanged, and they are now confirming that yes, that delivery target, which had been 820 has now been revised to 790, about 790 planes for the full year. But again, reiterating that the financial guidance remains unchanged. Airbus citing recent supplier quality issues on fuselage panels. And that, of course, is a story we have been reporting on. They've had to replace these panels because one supplier had been selling panels that were not the correct size. That is a redhead across the terminal right now. So this is a stock to watch for you at 8 a.m. UK time. This stock will be in focus. Airbus lowering its commercial aircraft delivery target from 820 to 790. And again, citing those supplier quality issues. Now, in other corporate news, HSBC has appointed Brendan Nelson as its next chair, replacing financier Mark Tucker, who has led Europe's largest lender for much of the last decade. 76-year-old Nelson had been serving as interim group chair since early October after joining the board in September 2023. He takes the reins as CEO George Elhedery pushes through a massive overhaul of HSBC that's seen the bank reorganised into 4 new divisions. Coming up, we will bring you an interview with Kevin Hassett, the National Economic Council head, seen as the front runner to replace Jerome Powell as Fed chair. That interview's coming up. This is Bloomberg. Good morning and welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett says he told President Trump he would accept the position of Fed chair if he was offered the job. In an interview recorded on November the 12th, Hassett told Carlyle co-founder and co-chairman David Rubenstein that he has high regard for Powell, but does not always agree with the current Fed chair's policy.
If you look at a chart of inflation, that it's a time series that has quite a bit of momentum. And, my friend I used to work with at the Fed, Alan Greenspan, used to say that, like, dealing with inflation is like steering the Queen Mary. They don't even have a Queen Mary anymore. I think they have a Queen Mary too. Kind of dates poor Alan. But the fact is that that if you look at it, then what happened is that in the Biden administration, it got very high, averaged 5%, was still in the high 3s when we came in, and now, like, if you look at the latest CPI, it surprised 48 of Bloomberg's people who forecast these things on the downside. If you adjust for a refinery that shut down, then you're kind of looking in the 0.2 range. And so I think that inflation isn't all the way to where you want it to be, but that the momentum is pretty directional. And so I think that if you add to that the basic idea that the policies that we're pursuing right now are increasing supply, their supply-side policies, then you should expect that we could have growth like we're seeing without picking up Phillips curve effects in inflation.
So you may have noticed the president was calling on the chairman of the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. And
really? He did?
Yes, he did. Oh. And the interest rates have been lowered. The last time the Federal Reserve FOMC committee met, they lowered by 25 basis points. There's a wide expectation that the Federal Reserve Board might lower again in December. Do you have a view on whether, if the Fed does lower it, should be 25 basis points or 50 basis points as the president, or do you have a view on what might be better for the economy?
Well, I first want to say that I have high regard for Jay Powell. I've known him for a long time, have had economic conversations with him many times during the last administration and this time too. And, I think at times he and I have had policy disagreements, but that's where it is. And I think that an example of a policy disagreement that Jay and I might have is that, I sort of agreed with the previous two meetings that it was the right time to cut rates. And then after the last meeting, the sort of two things that happened that surprised me looking at the macroeconomy is that we had the shutdown that happened and then was longer than expected, which is a negative for GDP. And then we had an inflation report, which was much better than everybody expected, why 48 people at Bloomberg missed it on the high side. And so I'm thinking, if I'm sitting at the FOMC thinking about how that affects my decision at the next meeting, then I'd say I'm more likely to move, because we got like two things that say, oh, well, the only news we have is more likely to move. And then somehow, Jay decided that the news between the two meetings made him less likely to move. And that's an example of a policy disagreement I have.
US National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett speaking with Carlyle co-founder and co-chairman David Rubenstein, of course. And you can watch more of that interview on the David Rubenstein Show on Bloomberg Television tonight at 6 p.m. London time. Some other stories making the news this Wednesday. BMW CEO Oliver Zipse is pressing the European Union to formally adopt a trade deal with the US that would give the German car maker respite from ongoing tariff pressure. Tariffs imposed by the US and EU have weighed on the luxury car maker's earnings, with German peers Mercedes-Benz and Porsche also getting hit. The US is BMW's second biggest overseas market. And China has condemned the UK for again delaying a decision on whether it can open a new embassy here in London. Beijing wants to build what would be the largest embassy in Europe on the site of the old Royal Mint, close to the City of London. A decision had been due in October, but that was pushed to this month amid a scandal over alleged Chinese espionage. A decision will now be made on January 20th. Coming up, we will be talking to Sven Kruck, co-CEO of Quantum Systems, about tripling its valuation, increasing production capacity of their unmanned aerial systems. That is next. This is Bloomberg. Good morning, this is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Tom McKenzie in London. Happy Wednesday. These are the stories that set your agenda. And then there was one. President Trump says he will name the new Fed chair early next year, hinting that Kevin Hassett is his possible choice. This as Bitcoin rebounds after a bruising sell-off. Stalemate in Moscow. Talks between Russia's Vladimir Putin and US envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner end without a breakthrough, leaving efforts to halt the fighting in Ukraine stalled. And the EU reaches a deal to phase out Russian gas imports faster than originally planned in an effort to finally sever the bloc's remaining energy dependence on Moscow. Let's get to the markets then. A slightly brighter picture. You had European markets that eked out very modest gains of 0.1% by the close on Tuesday. US markets as well, with the Nasdaq 100 gaining 0.8%, the S&P 500 up 0.2%. It's modest, but the gains are there. European futures pointing to build on that, up 0.2%. There's a lot of data out of the US in the next couple of days, with ADP private payroll data out later today, amongst other data sets. And then, of course, the Fed's preferred inflation gauge dropping on Friday, and the Fed's meeting itself and decision next week. FTSE 100 futures currently flat. S&P E-minis pointed to gains of 0.2%, and a similar picture for Nasdaq 100 futures. Let's flip the board and have a look cross-asset. US Treasuries relatively stable in the session today. The dollar is a little softer, 407 right now in the US benchmark 10-year. Dollar a little softer. That's giving a lift to the euro, which is up 0.2% at 116. And Bitcoin, there we go, after the pressure that it's been under, goes in on 94,000, up 2.5% in the session today. And Brent oil prices slightly stronger, up 0.2%. Let's get to the earnings story right now around Inditex, the parent company of Zara. The stock is up about 2% year to date. 9-month net sales coming in just slightly above the estimates for Inditex, 28.2 billion euros. The estimates had been for just over 28 billion euros. And again, that is in the first 9 months net sales. Net income is also slightly above the estimates, so it's a beat on net income for Inditex, 4.62 billion euros. The estimates have been 4.5 billion euros. There's a focus, of course, on in terms of the sales momentum and pricing around this business. Sales at a constant FX rate between November and December were up 11%. And again, the redhead is that the earnings are a beat for the 9 months, the first 9 months of the year, close to 6 billion euros. The estimates had been for 5.8 billion euros. That is the redhead for Inditex, a stock to watch at 8 a.m. UK time. Now, to the defence space. German drone maker Quantum Systems has tripled its valuation to 3 billion euros in a new funding round as the defence startup plans to increase production capacity of unmanned aerial systems. The startup sells surveillance drones that are being used by Ukraine in its war with Russia. It's also vying for contracts with the German government. Sven Kruck, co-CEO of Quantum Systems, joins me now. Sven, you and the team then in Quantum Systems firmly in the spotlight around the defence spending and, of course, the valuation of the business. To what extent is that spend from the German government on defence going to benefit companies like yours and others within the defence tech space?
I mean, we are and will be the powerhouse of unmanned systems, not only in Germany, but also all over Europe. So we see a crucial increase of spendings in unmanned systems in Germany and all over Europe and all NATO states. And we will play a crucial role in this game because we are delivering air, land and sea drones, but also the software elements between these.
And we know that the German government is working on procurement, potentially 2.9 billion euros. There may be a decision as soon as today. I know you can't comment specifically on individual procurement decisions, but are you in conversation with other governments in Europe, other governments including the UK, for example? Are you getting closer to deals with other nation states in terms of supplying your kit and software?
For sure. I mean, we are delivered thousands of units all over the globe. We are delivering our systems not only to Germany, not only to the UK, but also to other 12 NATO states here on the globe. And that's why I think this will increase. And we are in close discussions, not only with the German government, but this is a really critical element because Germany has to lead and will lead Europe in terms of our military spendings and also in our defense of Europe and the NATO.
Sven, is the urgency there? Are you feeling the urgency from these nation states, particularly as Russia continues to probe our airspace?
I mean, we heard it yesterday from Putin that he is ready to fight a war against Europe if Europe wants to have a war. That was his quote yesterday evening. And I think this urgency is seen. That's why we are increasing, especially in Germany, but all over Europe, our budgets coming from 50 billion in Germany, going to 90 billion in the next year. And I think this cruciality is seen. And we have now to step in to defend our European sovereignty, not only on the commercial side, if we see the conflicts with the US on terrorists and all over the globe about the world order, but we also have to defend our security and our values. And I think this cruciality is seen now.
What are the biggest roadblocks at this point, Sven?
I mean, the roadblocks are to spend this money for the right topics. If we speak about the new defense economy, where we see us as a critical and crucial element in software AI, unmanned systems, it's about how the old systems, if we talk about tanks, airplanes, will take place, and this spending will spend. And I think we have really to be clear that this relative portion of spending this for the old economy and for the new defense is a crucial element we have to take care of. And this decisions have to be made right. And I think that is a roadblocker we have to talk about.
And you recently raised, as we mentioned, about 180 million euros. You've talked about, or at least the team has talked about, putting some of that to work and some of that spending around counter-drone defence systems. How much progress have you made on that front, particularly when it comes to Europe's need to protect its borders from these drone incursions? When can you get those kind of systems live, and are you seeing demand for that?
I mean, first, we are spending all our efforts on speed. Yeah, we have to grow, we have to scale also the production capabilities. And if we talk about counter-UAS systems, we are ready to deliver in Q1 2026 these systems to our partners, but also in Ukraine. We are already testing it at the battlefront day by day. And I think we are ready in 2026 to deliver these and to protect also our skies here about critical infrastructures in Germany, in UK, and all the other NATO states.
So you're focused on the skies, and that has been the pedigree and the history of this business. But land and sea, how significant will that be for Quantum Systems going forward? And how much progress are you making on that front?
I mean, Quantum Systems is famous for their capabilities in the air. You're absolutely right. But now it's time for going multi-domain, so also delivering our knowledge and systems, not only on the air side, but also on the land side, on the sea side, and counter-UAS you have mentioned. And don't forget between the software element. And we have a great product which is called Mosaic, which is the orchestra of unmanned systems, all between these dimensions. And I think this is the way forward for us and the way forward for all governmental organizations to equip their forces.
What are the challenges of doing land, sea, and air simultaneously, Sven?
It's about the understanding and the interoperability between them. Yeah, it's about how you get really swarming. Then you want to do a mission together, not only having ISR in the air, but also at the end having ISR on the land side and sensors, acoustic sensors, radar sensors, and they have to fulfill the same mission at the same moment together. And I think this is the future of unmanned systems, the future of automation, and the future of efficiency of cost, efficiency of effectiveness, and efficiency of human capital we can bring here on the table, and we can really change the way of warfare in the next 12 to 24 months.
Sven, very briefly, IPO plans for 2026?
I mean, a company in our size has to think about it, and let's see what will come in the next 12 months.
OK, we'll be watching. Sven Kruck, thank you very much indeed, co-CEO of Quantum Systems. And the defence theme continues later. We're going to speak to the CEO of German defence firm Hensoldt. That's at 7:30 a.m. London time. Now, foreign ministers are arriving at the NATO headquarters in Brussels to discuss the alliance's support for Ukraine. Bloomberg's chief Europe correspondent Oliver Kruck is there and joins us now with a guest. Ollie.
Yeah, Tom, thank you so much. We're very pleased to be joined by Baiba, Braže, who is the foreign minister of Latvia, speaking to us now here live at the sidelines of the NATO foreign ministers meeting. I'd like to begin, Minister, if we might, just with your reaction from what we saw out of Moscow, the commentary over the last sort of 12 hours after that meeting with Mr. Witkoff and Vladimir Putin.
I don't see any surprise between the peace and President Trump's wish to achieve that peace. There is only one person, and that is a butcher in Kremlin, and that's what we saw also. We have seen that all this time, and nothing has changed.
And from these sort of discussions now that you're expected to have with NATO allies, this is really a crucial moment for Ukraine. We've said that there have been many crucial moments, but this feels really at the moment in which the balances can be tilted in Ukraine's favor. What is NATO's role? What are Europeans' role in order to achieve that in the next few days and weeks?
So NATO's role, NATO's KPI, is what it has been since the establishment, to maintain peace and security in the Euro-Atlantic area for its members. And NATO has been very successful in that respect. So we expect NATO to continue to be successful, to continue to achieve its objective, to maintain peace and security in Euro-Atlantic area. And for that, obviously, we have made the decisions knowing and accepting that Russia is a threat to Euro-Atlantic security, just as provided by the NATO strategic concept. We have made the decision to strengthen our own deterrence and defense, raising defense expenditures to 5%, but also strengthening resilience. That's what we are doing in Latvia. It's 5% for the next year's budget. It's more than 4% this year. And it's hardcore defense capability. So it's in accordance with NATO's defense plans. So we expect all the allies to be doing that. Of course, each will have its own sort of schedule to achieve that. But that is the most important thing, because Russia respects peace, Russia respects strength, and to achieve peace we need strength.
And one of these sort of issues that there has been with these negotiations, the Europeans have not really been included in many of them. We saw the 28-point plan that seemed to have been made with very little European input. How do you get the Europeans to the table, and specifically on the question of Russian assets? This is seen as the big point of leverage. Do you think that the Europeans will get their act together and move on this in the next few weeks?
Well, the negotiation should be between Ukraine and Russia. Russia is refusing that, so we welcome that the US is really pushing hard, and we welcome all the efforts to achieve that peace. There are issues that will affect European security, and on those Europe is involved, and it's Europe as not as a continent but as allies that are members of NATO and the EU, so it's a generic expression of Europe. But in the same time, it's very clear that those issues that are for Ukraine and Russia to be solved, it's between them, but we assist Ukraine. We, of course, stand by Ukraine in very practical ways.
And for the Russian assets?
And for the Russian assets, we are working on that. I mean, politically, decision has been made that Russia, unless it compensates Ukraine fully for and contributes to reconstruction, the assets won't be returned. How to use them against the reparation loan or other constructs, that's the next step.
And how damaging is it that Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, is not here today to discuss this and brief you?
I look forward to engaging with Christoph Landau. It's not the first time that the U.S. Secretary is not here. We have all, I think, ministers here met Marco Rubio a number of times in various occasions and spoken to him, so we will continue doing that, and I look forward to engaging with Christoph Landau.
Well, Minister Braže, thank you so much for your time. Greatly appreciated speaking with Bloomberg here at the sidelines of the NATO HQ.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'll send it back to you in London.
OK, Bloomberg's chief Europe correspondent Oliver Kruck on the ground for us from Brussels. Ollie, thank you. Coming up, backing some of the biggest names in European tech, including the likes of Spotify and Klarna. We're going to be speaking to Peter Specht, general partner of the VC firm Creandum. That's coming up. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Now, Black Forest Labs has raised $300 million in a Series B investment round. The German startup that has developed an AI image generation model is now valued at $3.25 billion US. Just one of a number of high-profile, fast-growing European companies in the portfolio of Creandum. The early-stage venture capital firm has also invested in the likes of Spotify, Lovable, Bolt and Klarna, just to name a few. Joining us now is Peter Specht, general partner at Creandum. Peter, fantastic to get you in the studio this morning. How's the year been so far?
It's been a very good year. I think there's a lot of momentum in the market and in the portfolio, and we're pretty happy about it.
What are returns looking like? I mean, your funds must be, you've got some credible names in the portfolio. How comfortable are you with the returns and where the fund is positioned, particularly vis-a-vis some of your competitors in this space?
I mean, venture is a long-term game, so you need to look at returns over a longer horizon. But we're pretty lucky that Creandum is, over the past 2 decades in Europe, one of the best performing funds out there. And 1 in 6 companies that we back have become billion-dollar-plus companies. and that leads to some funds returning up to 13x, which was our Creandum 2 fund. But it has been going very well for us.
13x, 1-3.
Yeah,
that's pretty good round of returns. You've backed companies, as we mentioned, companies like Spotify, like Klarna, like Depop. What are the category-defining European companies that you can think about now that maybe some in the markets are underestimating or undervaluing? Are there some names that kind of jump to the fore in terms of category-defining European startups?
Yeah, I think we have a few category-defining European startups, and they span across, I would say, voice AI, and this is companies like 11 Labs. They are in the code generation space, companies like Lovable. They are in the image generation space, Black Forest Labs that you just mentioned. And then we have Mistral, for example, on the LLM side from Paris. I think these are, I would say, the leading ones. We also have Synthesia here in the UK. And then there's a lot of, rising more on the application layer side startups that are fast growing and hopefully we'll soon get to that level of scale that these companies already have.
And in the introduction, we talked about Black Forest Labs and their $300 million raise. How important is it? They're one of the few European AI model companies, text to image generation and video, that is really competing on a global scale. How important is that for Europe?
I think it's extremely important, A, for not being fully dependent on Chinese models or American models, but B, to have a flourishing European ecosystem and to create that and attract that type of talent. And Black Forest Labs, for example, is a leader on the global leaderboard on like text-to-image generation. They work with over a dozen Fortune 500 companies like Meta, Adobe, Microsoft. So top of the top, the top two spots in like image generation are currently Google and Black Forest Labs and their Flux models. And so it's really competing against the giants and doing so very successfully and outcompeting them also on global stage. And that attracts talent, that brings sort of like wealth to the ecosystem, and is extremely important for Europe, sort of like AI development.
Given all the concerns around AI bubbles, how do you find the signal from the noise in this space? You're a very early investor. You take these bets at an early stage. How do you cut through some of the smoke signals?
I mean, in venture, you speak to hundreds of startups each year, or if not thousands of startups each year. And so it is always like, which are the companies that stand out in terms of teams, in terms of traction, commercial adoption, product innovation. And I think in the early stage, it's much harder to do that as you have less signals. But I think once we see real commercial adoption, especially in the AI age, companies are growing much, much faster than before. I mean, Lovable is the most prominent example. Where it really separates sort of like from the masses of the standout companies versus the companies still in building stage.
Are you comfortable with valuations at this point? Are valuations in sync or a little out of whack?
I would say partially. Currently, the valuations, I would say, are high but are a reflection of the growth rates we're seeing in the market. The speed of adoption and speed of revenue growth we're seeing with this company is unparalleled to what we've ever seen before. How fast companies reach 100, 200, 300 million ARR in a matter of 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. And that is reflected in the valuations. That said, this in particular accounts for outlier companies that can back this up with valuations. But of course, there's also companies that still need to grow into some of the valuations that we see in the market.
At the start of this year, a lot of people I spoke to within your field, within your space, were talking about this being the year of agentic AI. Has it been? I mean, I get that that's definitely going to be something we are all contending with and possibly benefiting from. But has this really been the year of agentic AI in terms of adoption?
I think we're definitely seeing that in the market right now, and I think there's 2-3 factors that led to that. One is much better reasoning models, and the most recent model generation with ChatGPT-5 or Gemini 3 or Claude 4.5 is really got much better, sort of like in their output and making it answers trusted, as well as inference costs have gone down over 90% over the past 18 months. And so these factors combined lead to stronger adoption, in particular in 3 fields around standard business processes in companies and enterprises that are well defined, like legal AI or finance. You have voice AI, like customer service, or code generation and productivity that are, I would say, at the forefront of adoption with companies like Cursor creating over $1 billion in ARR.
I don't know if you saw the memo that Sam Altman put out to the team at OpenAI, this red alert that he put out on Monday, because of concerns that Gemini 3 is starting to carve out that demand and nip at the heels of ChatGPT right now. What do you make of the race that's going on amid the likes of Anthropic and Gemini and OpenAI and Mistral, and who ends up winning? I mean, is OpenAI at risk at this point?
I think, like in most traditional markets today, there's always several companies in sort of like leading positions, and my personal hunch is that you will have 2-3 model companies, being the major players like we see it today. I think people won't always rely on one company, and so I think we'll always see 3 or 4 players, or 2 to 3 players that will have a spot.
And Black Forest might be one of those 2 to 3.
In the image generation and video generation, so everything around visual intelligence, they are today one of the 2 to 3 players, and I think they will be in the future.
Peter, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate your time. Peter Specht, General Partner at Creandum. We appreciate it. Plenty more coming up on Bloomberg. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back. You're starting to see that correlation once again in terms of risk on sentiment, in terms of the futures picture for Europe and the US, and the upside that's coming through for Bitcoin. What a turnaround. Close to 94,000 after about $1 billion worth of leveraged bets on the cryptocurrency were wiped out. Of course, we've had comments from the SEC chair that have been supportive, at least that's been the reading, and Vanguard as well, agreeing to allow some ETFs, crypto ETFs and mutual funds to trade on their platforms. So those seem to be some of the catalysts. We'll see how fragile this is as Bitcoin closes in on 94,000. Let's flip the board and have a look at Oracle, which of course has been on a debt spree as well to fund out its build of AI infrastructure. And we have a story looking at the CDS swap, so the protection in terms of a potential risk of any default, those costs of protection on CDS at the highest levels since 2009, since the financial crisis. When it comes to Oracle, the balance sheet is a little bit more pressured than maybe some of the other hyperscalers. So that is just one to gauge as the question marks continue, of course, about the spend out around AI. Let's flip the board and have a look at the gas story, because we have the Europeans finally agreeing to pull forward their severing of Russian gas to 2027. And they can do this because gas prices are so much lower. You can see the 30% drop. This is over a 2-year period at the lowest now since 2024. That's giving them the space to cut off the European Russian gas into Europe earlier than had been expected. Coming up, International Energy Agency Executive Director Fatih Birol will be joining us exclusively on Opening Trade, starting at 8:45. Opening Trade is next. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.